Oh, good. Oh, I saw him in that chest and thought that we had gotten into where he'd gotten to Asgard yet, but not yet. He does go to Asgard eventually, though. Oh, that's right. He's got to help her with her grandmother. This stuff with the grandmas interesting. Like the giant stuff kind of confuses me because like not all giants are giants. But and that seems to even not different, or that seems to even be differentiated between families. Like Angrboda is the same size as Atreus, but her grandmother is more like what you would think of when you think of a giant. She's giant. I don't know. I don't understand how that works. But I mean, it's still interesting. I'm thorough. I don't know. The story's still interesting to me. It's just there are some parts of it that I don't entirely understand. But I do like Anchorboat. I do like all of the supporting characters I've come across up to this point. They're all interesting in their own ways. But yeah, this stuff with the prophecies and Asgard and whatnot, I'm not sure how it's going to play out, but I guess we'll find out as we go. Great looking game though, great story, a lot of fun so far. Very happy with how it runs on this system. Just overall, really great game. I don't know. I'm sorry though, guys. Like, I'm really having a hard time filling in the rest of this time. Oh gosh, like I don't really know what else to talk about. I'm sorry. Like I said, I'll try and do better in the future about this kind of stuff. Like had I made like a plan for commentary for this, I'd be doing much better off. But I don't know. I've already mentioned numerous times what happened with the audio here, and I just have to deal with it. But I don't know. I'm struggling to fill in this much time. Like, obviously, I needed to come up with more of a script because it only got me about an hour into an hour and 45. And I'm still trying to fill in the gap on the last, 40 something minutes. I've gotten about 15 minutes in so far, 15 to 18, something like that. And, so much. I've done the majority of it already, but it just, seems like so much trying to come up with this last little bit. I wish I would have just checked the audio a little bit quicker in Audacity instead of letting it go as long as I did before. I mean, not Audacity, OBS, before letting it go as long as I did before I found out what was going on. I could have definitely fixed this a lot easier and a lot sooner if I had just gotten in the habit of just doing a test at the beginning of every recording session and just like recording like a 2-minute test or something just to make sure everything's running before committing so that I don't find myself in these positions. But that's how we learn. Especially with a different setup. And I know it's some of it is getting used to using different software from what I previously used. Some of it's getting used to using a different operating system from what I previously used. And that's all entirely acceptable, and it's all entirely, decisions that I was aware of, or situations I was aware of when I made the decisions I made. I absolutely knew that when I built this computer, I didn't want to use Windows. And, that comes with consequences. So I had to accept that I wasn't going to be able to do anything with Adobe. But I also know that there's plenty of alternatives that work on Linux. I knew that even before I got into this because, yes, I was never daily driving a Linux machine before I built this one. It's been close to 2 months now. I know I started ordering parts in August, like early to mid-August, and I don't remember if I built it in August or if I built it at the start of September. But it's been close to 2 months now since I've been using this setup. But prior to this, I did actually have some experience working with Linux. I had a Chromebook I bought back in, like, I want to say 2013, something like that, 2014, that once I realized only worked with an internet connection, because it was essentially only a netbook and only worked with web apps, and it only worked with online setups. I realized I needed a computer that I could rely on with or without an internet connection, and I found out that there was a way through the dev mode in Chromebook to set up a partition on it for something else, and so I partitioned it to run Ubuntu so that I could have a desktop where I could actually access programs and software outside of web apps, and I could actually save documents in progress too, instead of relying on like Google Drive or Google Docs as the Chromebook is wont to do. So that worked out, and that was really cool. And I knew a little bit back then with Linux about running the terminal and whatnot. Like, I could do basic stuff in terminal, like I could create a directory or a file, or I could move stuff from one directory to another, just super basic file maintenance stuff, nothing extraordinary. So yeah, basically I did have previous Linux experience, and I did do research before I set everything up to figure out which way I wanted to go with Linux, because there are like thousands of different distributions of Linux, each one aimed toward a certain different type of functionality, because the Linux is really only the kernel, but we're not going to get into that. But the Linux operating system as we know it today is designed to be able to do a lot of different things, more things than any one individual machine is going to do, but that's because it has to be able to appeal to a variety of different people who have a variety of different use cases for their machines. So but this particular version of Linux I went with because it's set up for gaming right out of the box, and because I was already familiar with the guy who wrote its work, because I was already using GE Proton on Steam Deck and whatnot. So I made an informed decision. And yes, I've been able to find, for the most part, solutions on Linux for everything, and most of it falling under open source, freeware, and open sourceware, stuff that you don't necessarily have to pay for. And I have tried looking into some paid stuff too, but unfortunately, it was never an issue of paying for the software or anything like that. It was just, will it fit my use case? And unfortunately, it just does not. And that's fine. Again, it's all decisions I made and things I have to deal with. Like, for example, I was going to try and get DaVinci Resolve on here, because DaVinci Resolve is very good editing software, and even gives you the option of using a UI that mimics Premiere Pro. Sorry. And I imagine functions very similarly to Premiere Pro, but there were some caveats I ran into. And while my previous statement about AMD and Linux holds true, that AMD and Linux do get along very well, and it is very much mostly a set it and forget it situation. And while it is typically that NVIDIA tends to require more care when setting it up to work in Linux, DaVinci Resolve is one situation where NVIDIA does win over AMD and Linux, because apparently you cannot transcode with AMD in DaVinci Resolve in the Linux version. You pretty much have to utilize
NVIDIA, if you want the full functionality of a video editor like DaVinci Resolve. So basically, if I were to use DaVinci Resolve, I would only be able to get raw media output from it. I wouldn't be able to edit it and transcode it and compress it and all that stuff. I'd only be able to edit it and export it raw to then have to put into another editor like Handbrake or Kdenlive to transcode and format for upload. Whereas I'm currently already editing in Kdenlive anyway, so it is literally, in my use case, would just be adding an extra step to my existing process. So DaVinci Resolve was a no-go as much as I wanted it to work, because I'm already recording with OBS, which I'd have to do either way, and then importing into Kdenlive, and then in situations like this where I need additional audio, facilitating that through Audacity and just piecing everything together like that. And so literally, as much as I would love to have DaVinci Resolve, it would just be recording in OBS, editing in DaVinci Resolve, exporting it as raw, importing it into Kdenlive, doing any further tweaking, editing, balancing, mixing that would need to be done in that process, then transcode and compress it to MP4, and get it ready for upload to YouTube, which that's another thing. Even if I could transcode in DaVinci Resolve, I cannot transcode into MP4, also known as H.264, H.265, because neither the free nor studio versions of DaVinci Resolve include the drivers to encode H.264, H.265 out of the box. You actually have to pay for that driver additionally outside of paying for the studio license for the professional version of DaVinci Resolve, which, mind you, I have no qualms paying for the software, especially because it supports a Linux version, and that's awesome. But I don't feel that I should have to pay additional money for the driver that I want to use for one of the most common, if not the most common, video formats in the traditional media. So, and yes, I know it's possible to find a free version of the driver, but that, again, is not the point. The point is it would literally just be adding another step to the process anyway, for the simple fact that I chose to go all AMD, which is a fair and logical choice to make when utilizing a Linux system. And I don't want to add additional steps to the existing process. So I'm just going to stick with Kdenlive and Audacity and OBS and just try to get better about making sure that everything is set up the way it's supposed to be, and sampling with short recordings rather than committing to long recordings only to find out I have to do things like this. So yeah, lessons definitely been learned. It will definitely make for better content in the future once I get through all the hiccups. Like I said, there's hiccups you guys aren't even privy to yet because that content has not been made available to you yet. But yes, as I get everything ironed out and I learn from my mistakes and put better practices into place to mitigate the cleanup, things will definitely improve, and have been improving as I've been going along in small steps. Like today, I seem to have gotten a much better handle on Audacity, which is good because I'm going to need it. And so we're going to get there step by step, piece by piece. I know now I need to pretty much check OBS anytime I do anything with my computer, regardless of whether I think it will mess with OBS or not. And I now know I need to dig around more in my system settings to see if there's something I can do to better balance my microphone so that it doesn't sound like I'm yelling into it when I'm having a normal conversation in front of it, and that I won't have to sit 5 feet away from it to achieve that. There definitely has got to be some options somewhere to better balance the audio on this microphone. If it's not in the system settings itself, then in Audacity itself. But all of this will get worked out. For now, things are working. So I'm just going to let it keep going the way it's going until I find the better solution. And all along the way, I'm going to definitely have to be double checking things to make sure I'm not breaking them as I'm attempting to fix them. So yes, thank you all again for your patience. I greatly appreciate you. And we will get through this journey together, piece by piece. And I decided that I am going to kind of do a system showcase type video thing to show people what I'm on here, what I'm gaming on. Because I know, like I said earlier, people have asked about my setup because of the quality of the game, which I appreciate that. You know, I tried to build a machine that could give content like this and not be hindered. So I'm glad that it's working out that way. I just need to iron out all the bugs in between to make it a fully rewarding experience for everyone. But yes, I'll do something to kind of showcase my setup, and I'll try to make it as friendly and easy as possible. I'm not going to like try to super delve into stuff, because while I do have a little bit of prior experience with Linux, and I have been using this rig for a couple months now, like again, I'm not a super genius on the terminal, so you're not going to have to worry about me like scaring you with any kind of terminal stuff. Usually anything I do in the terminal I have to look up troubleshooting for, because I still haven't pieced together all the syntaxes. I try to use the manuals, but I haven't pieced together the syntax entirely in my head yet. So sometimes I do have to look that kind of stuff up, but I can do basic stuff like create a document, create a folder, move stuff around, remove stuff. I know a little bit of stuff about like SSH and things like that, but I'm not going to get into a bunch of that. I just want to show people what I got going here, how I make it work, and just let people see that there's a lot of misconceptions about Linux and gaming on Linux, and the concept of Linux in people's minds. Like, I know a lot of people, when they think Linux, if they even are familiar with what Linux is in any slight way, most people immediately think of the terminal, or they get some like hacker man image in their mind with monitors with like something out of the Matrix with like just cascading code and stuff like that. And it's not like that. It's a regular operating system, just like any other operating system. You just have to think about it a little bit differently when you use it. And yes, the terminal does exist, and yes, there is justification for having the terminal, and yes, it is important to try to learn the terminal. But there are definitely systems in Linux, distributions in Linux, that are set up to minimize the requirement for the terminal for people who are just transitioning in from another system like Mac or Windows. And I want to try and help break the stigma of Linux. I'm not going to try and convert anybody. I just want to help people understand it, that yes, it is a free operating system, and yes, you are responsible for a lot more of your own maintenance than you would be through Windows or Mac, but it is still a great operating system, and it can still achieve a lot of great things, even with it being open source and free. And I just want to help people be aware of that, because it is a great system, and it deserves more attention, and more people should consider trying it and not be afraid of it just because it's foreign and it's something they don't know or understand, or they have some malinformed image of. Because there's a lot of people out there who have a lot of machines who, come October of next year, are going to be useless because Windows 10 is end of life, and there's a lot of machines out there that don't meet the requirement for Windows 11. And Microsoft is going to expect you to just buy a new machine if your machine does not meet the requirements for Windows 11, which means you're going to end up with a piece of e-waste. So why waste money? Why waste perfectly good hardware? Because Microsoft doesn't want to support your equipment anymore, when you could just as easily put a Linux operating system on that machine and continue to use it for years to come. I have a laptop, an Aspire E15. It's old. It was running Windows 8. It struggles to function at this point in its life. And I just wiped the Windows off of it and put Linux Mint on it, and it works just fine. It's a little slow to start up because it is an old machine. But once it's started up and once Mint's running, it's snappy, it's fresh, it's like it's a brand new machine. And that could have easily ended up in a pile of e-waste had I not removed Windows from the equation. So I'm just saying that, you know, people are going to have to look at options, and, you know, the Microsoft option is going to be a lot more costly than the other options. So, yeah, as we wrap this video up, I've decided that, yeah, I'll try to work this out where I can get OBS to play nice with my microphone. And I'll do a recording of my desktop, and I'll give folks the friendly Linux tour and show you how playing gaming on Windows works without Windows. It's fun and it's exciting and I love it. And I actually am actively forcing myself to learn the terminal, just because you ultimately will, even in a system that tries to not expose you to the terminal, you will ultimately at some point in your life need the terminal, because that is one thing about Linux, is you are your own system administrator. There's going to come a time when you're going to need the terminal. So I am encouraging myself and challenging myself, and in some ways forcing myself to become more familiar with the terminal so that I can become a more well-rounded Linux user. But that's neither here nor there. That's something that the user chooses to do. You can choose to rely on the graphical user interface like you do with Windows and Mac. You can choose to familiarize yourself with the terminal and in the end benefit greater from that, because like I said, Linux works just as well as Windows or Mac. It has its pros and cons, just like Windows and Mac. But you, the user, are in control of the system, and you're going to need to know the terminal. So, transitioning from one to the other through a graphical interface is good. It helps you utilize something familiar to learn something not so familiar. But I don't think any user who wants to use it should use the graphical interface as a crutch. You should at the very least know some basic Linux commands. How to look at your mounted drives, how to look at the directories in your system, how to create a file, how to create a directory, how to move them around, how to rename them, how to delete them within the terminal. Those things should be known because they're useful. Not always required, but useful. So we'll definitely get into more of that in a separate video, not related to any of the games or anything like that. I'll make a separate video just about my system, and we'll get more into that. But like I said, we'll keep it friendly. I'm not trying to scare anyone away. I'm just trying to help people familiarize themselves with other options that may provide benefits that current options do not, and help you get comfortable with considering those options if that was an option you needed to consider. If you are a Windows 10 user trying to figure out a solution other than paying out for Windows 11, watching this other video on my system might help you decide that you have other options. But like I said, I'm not here to convert anyone. I same thing as what I said with the games. If you want to game on PlayStation, you want to game on Xbox, you want to game on whatever, game on it. Game on. That's the point. Same thing with the OSs. If Windows is your shtick, go Windows. If Mac is your thing, go Mac. If you're open to other ideas or possibilities, and you don't mind getting a little technical when you need to, you might consider looking at Linux. And like I said, I'll give you a peek into it with another video. But we're getting close to the end here. And again, I just want to thank everyone for watching. The total runtime on this video is about 1:43. We're about 1:40 in right now. But I'm just going to go ahead and wrap up the audio now and just say thanks for watching, guys. And if you enjoy my content, please, and you're not already subscribed, please do subscribe. Stuff's only going to get better as we go. And if you have been subscribed to me all this time and you're still here, thank you. Thank you for your patience. And as I work this stuff out, stuff will get a lot better now, because recording on a desktop and producing on a desktop, far greater, far easier, far superior than trying to do it from a console. Hands down, 100%, no doubt. So thank you again, guys, for watching. I love you very much, and we'll see you in the next one. I'm gonna wrap up now. If you want to follow the subtitles for the last little bit, go ahead. If you'd rather check out now, totally understand. Next set of videos will have full audio again, and you won't have to listen to me ramble for an hour and 45. All right, guys. Thank you again.